What's up everyone, welcome back to The Common Critic. My name is Kevin and today we are going to be reviewing and going over the Bad Batch episodes 1 and 2. Now if you haven't seen these episodes already, and if you don't like spoilers, definitely go watch them first because there are some spoilers ahead and I don't want to ruin anything for you. Before we begin, if you're not already subscribed, hit that subscribe button. Also, if you have any ideas of what you want to see from us in the future, drop some comments down below of what you'd like to see. Alright, so to jump right into it, what I would like to do is just kind of go over some key points of each episode, just some scenes, some characters that really stood out to me that I liked the most. Alright, episode 1, The Aftermath. This episode definitely jumped right into it, a great premiere, right into the action, and we actually get an appearance by Caleb Doom, a Jedi Padawan. I was super excited to see Caleb. He's one of my all-time favorite Jedis and Star Wars characters out there. So in this episode, we actually see that Caleb Doom is able to escape the grasp of Order 66. From a sacrifice from his Master Deppa, who stays behind and tells him to run. A little bit further into how I know Caleb and why I was so excited. In the Star Wars animated series Rebels, there's a character by the name of Kanan Jarrus, a Jedi, or I guess we can say ex-Jedi. So his backstory is that of Caleb Doom. So when Order 66 happened, as we see, his master told him to run. He escaped. Where he went to, he went into hiding, and a few years down the road actually joined the rebellion under a different name, Kanan Jarrus. In Rebels, we hear a little bit about what Kanan had to go through when Order 66 happened, and we got a little bit of his backstory. And so to actually see that played out in the Bad Batch was really awesome to see. I was not expecting it. I honestly wasn't expecting this episode to start out the way it did. Right when Order 66 was happening, that was definitely a surprise, exciting and sad one at the same time. But, I am glad that we got that content and we're actually able to see a little bit more of Caleb Doom. Another point I wanted to touch on is why the Bad Batch, why Hunter himself wanted to go save Caleb when he ran away. So we see right away the Bad Batch was not affected by Order 66. They did not turn right away. They actually didn't turn at all, except for Crosshairs, which I'll get into in just a moment. So we see right when Order 66 is executed and is called out, the Bad Batch doesn't know what's going on. Tech actually has to kind of go into some data files and reads about this order. In order to execute all the Jedi, that the Jedi have committed treason and they're to be executed, all of them. So this came as a huge shock to the Bad Batch, obviously, because, the clones have fought against the Jedi for years now in the Clone Wars. And so on their return to Kamino, they're all just very confused as to what's happening. Why was this order given? So the Bad Batch returns to Kamino, very confused as to what's happening. And as they're coming into Kamino, things just seem different. They're getting different landing orders. The clones are acting different as well. And tech suggests that it's due to their programming. Now, they're programmed to act differently. And this is definitely confirmed. Obviously, in different Star Wars content, we see it. But if you're just watching the Bad Batch for the first time, it's confirmed to them when they're standing almost like in a big old meeting of Chancellor Palpatine announcing the Empire. All the clones are in one room, all lined up, and when Palpatine announces the start of the Empire, all these clones start cheering, and then that's when the Bad Batch knew it was due to their programming that they turned so easily to join the Empire as well as turn their backs on the Jedi. Obviously, the Bad Batch is a group of mutated clones, and so their programming, the chip that they have, just isn't as strong. It's not working on them at all, except for, like I said, Crosshairs, who seems to just be off. He wants to follow orders, which the Bad Batch never does. He's mad at Hunter for letting Caleb go, and we just see him acting strange and really just acting against what the Bad Batch wants to do, and especially against Hunter, who's the leader of the group. Crosshairs doesn't see that he is fit to it. So we definitely know something's off there, definitely foreshadowing the turn of Crosshairs if it wasn't obvious from the trailers enough. It was obvious here that Crosshairs was meant to, in a way, turn himself, obviously not by choice, but by programming, which is really just difficult to see. A member of the Bad Batch, a group of brothers, having one of them turn. But it's definitely going to make for a really great storyline. I think in the future, we're going to see Crosshairs is going to be the leader of a group that actually goes after to try to capture the Bad Batch. It's really going to be interesting to see just exactly how that plays out, because the way I see it, I don't see any member of the Bad Batch wanting to hurt or harm Crosshairs in any way. But since Crosshairs has now been turned, that his chip has now been enhanced, he has no hesitation of going after the Bad Batch now. So we're definitely going to get some awesome content in this series in the future with that. Also in this episode, we get an introduction of a new character almost right away, Omega. Now, I talked about Omega a little bit last week, just saying how I didn't know any of her backstory, who she was going to be, and to be honest, I'm still a little confused as to why she's here. So what we know, she's a clone, she's a mutated clone. Now, if you didn't know this, Omega is actually the last letter of the Greek alphabet, which could be foreshadowing that she will be the last of the mutated clones. We know she's not a normal clone, she has to be mutated. When Admiral Tarkin is on Kamino, he asks how many mutated clones are there, and Nala Se, Doctor on Kamino, responds with 5. Immediately, you would think, 5 members of the Bad Batch: Hunter, Echo, Crosshairs, Wrecker, and Tech. But the thing is, Echo is not a mutated clone. Echo started out a regular. And so the 5th mutated clone that they were actually talking about is Omega, hinting that she may be the last of these mutated clones. That being said, that is really all we get of who Omega is. There's definitely a lot of theories that I want to talk about. She's used around Kamino as a health assistant, almost like a nurse, always following Nala Se, the doctor on Kamino. And so maybe she was built for that purpose, but I really just don't think that's it. They say that every clone is made with purpose. Each member of the Bad Batch was mutated with a purpose. They each have their own unique ability. So the question stands, what's Omega's ability? Some things we see in her that are some popular theories going out there right now is that she is force sensitive, or maybe she has the skills of all the Bad Batch members put together. And also a wild theory out there, she could be a clone of Palpatine, which is actually a theory that I really like. It's kind of far-fetched, but I think that would be an awesome storyline. Now, the theory of her being force sensitive came from the part when all the Bad Batch members are stuck in a cell with Omega, and Omega actually goes up to Crosshairs and senses his emotion, senses that he's angry, and tells him, "I know what you're about to do, please don't do it." This scene was definitely foreshadowing the turn of Crosshairs. We could already tell, like I said, throughout the whole episode, he was acting different. He was angry towards Hunter, and he was turning a little bit and wanting to follow orders. So it could be a little bit of force sensitivity from Omega that she was able to tell that. Now, the theory of her having, a unique ability kind of put together of each member of the Bad Batch definitely makes a lot of sense too. As they're escaping, Omega is able to push out a kind of air duct vent very easily. So maybe she has a little bit, of unnatural strength like Wrecker. Also, as they're escaping, she grabs a gun and shoots. For the very first time, she shoots a gun out of Crosshair's hand. Now, to shoot a gun, first time ever, to have that great of aim and accuracy, that's just kind of unheard of unless you have just a natural ability for it. So maybe she got a little bit of Crosshair from that. All right, last, her being a clone of Palpatine. I know that sounds a little bit far-fetched. That's what I thought myself, but thinking about it a little more, it does make sense. Now, she does kind of have the hairstyle of him. Also, the fact that she may have some force sensitivity. Maybe she got that from Palpatine. Also, we do see in the later movies of the Skywalker saga that Palpatine was creating clones. I mean, that's how he created Snoke. So it's very possible that he started this process with Omega. It's very far-fetched. I don't think that's the case, although it would be a very unique and cool storyline to see. But I really think my opinion on it is that she has some ability that we haven't even seen yet. I do like the idea that she's force sensitive, or maybe she has the ability of each Bad Batch member, but I think there's a specific purpose for her that just hasn't been unveiled yet, so I'm very excited to see what happens there. As we know, a little bit later in this episode, the Bad Batch is sent to take care of some insurgents who they think are some remaining droids of the Separatists, some enemies to the what once was the Republic, now the new Empire. So they go off on this mission, and what they come upon is actually a group of women and children, and really just the civilians is what it looks like. When they get a little closer, they realize it's actually a group led by Saw Gerrera. Now, if you don't know who Saw is, he's actually showing up a lot more than I expected him to. I'm glad to see him. I love his character. A little bit of backstory. So he shows up in the Clone Wars. He actually starts a rebellion on his home planet to take it back from control of the Separatists. We see him again in the animated series Rebels as well, still fighting for the rebellion. And then once again, we do see him in the movie Rogue One. But here in the Bad Batch, we see that he's actually leading this little group, and the Bad Batch is confused as to why they're running away, because the war is over. Saw Gerrera doesn't agree with that. He thinks, this Clone Wars is done, but the Civil War is just starting. The Empire's no different to Separatists or anything that they had originally fought against. So he has already started the rebelling. This is just 24 hours after the Clone War has ended. So the Civil War, the rebellion started right away, which is just a little bit of cool information that I didn't know. Because since we get to see the start of the Empire, we weren't sure how quickly things were taken into effect. And in episode 2, we actually see just how quickly everything was changed in the universe. All right, and so when the Bad Batch realized that this group wasn't from the Separatists, wasn't a bunch of droids, they're women and children, and really just a bunch of civilians, they obviously didn't execute their order to go take out these insurgents. And then you see that they were actually being followed by a probe droid, and so they knew that they were being tested, and they obviously just failed the test from Admiral Tarkin. And what they realized at that moment as well is that they were not going to be safe. No mutated clone was going to be safe at this point, and so that means Omega was in trouble as well. And they knew she was back on Kamino. They knew something was up. Omega actually warned them about Kamino before they left on this mission, saying that it was a setup and that it was a trap. And so they knew Omega was in trouble as well. So they went back to Kamino to save Omega. And what I really want to touch on last about this episode is their escape. So we see they're able to escape their cell with a lot of help from Omega, and when they get to the hangar, they are confronted, of course, by Crosshairs, who was just turned, 100%. His inhibitor chip was enhanced, and so now he is fully under control of the new Empire. So Crosshairs and a team of clones, try to stop the Bad Batch from leaving. They're shooting at them, trying to close the doors so the ship can't get out. And one interesting thing that we actually see is Nala Se, the Doctor of Kamino, actually holds the door open, is overriding kind of the lock, the switch to close the door to help them escape. A lot of theories behind this. It could be that Nala Se has a soft spot for Omega because Omega was always at her side. Could also be that Omega has this purpose that Nala Se needs to keep. She needs her alive because Omega was made for something, and that's why she allowed them to escape and assisted with that. So obviously at this point we know Crosshairs has turned. We know Omega's something special. We're not sure what's going to happen there. All right, so as the Bad Batch finally escapes, we realize it's Omega's first time anywhere, and you could just really tell that on her face. You could tell how happy she is, so that's actually really cool to see. And where they take off to, Hunter says that they are going to J19 and that they have a friend there, and that's how the episode ends. So it definitely leaves you wondering, where's J19? Who's this friend that we're thinking of? And so when I first saw the premiere, my first thought was Rex. Okay, they know where Rex is. They were friends with him. Maybe they knew that Rex was saved from the inhibitor chip. That was my first guess. My second guess was actually that they were going to find Cut, who is a clone that we see in the Clone Wars, who actually kind of abandoned the Republic and the war, the army. He's in there for a few episodes, and since he was I guess you could say, runaway rogue clone, and now the Bad Batch, they're all runaways too. That's where they were going. It definitely left us on a great cliffhanger. Really just overall a good premiere. I mean, who's not happy with a 75-minute premiere? Now, if I were to rate this, I would honestly give it a 9.5 out of 10. Now, I had little to no complaints about the premiere. I was engaged the whole time. It really set up a great storyline with Crosshairs. It had a great storyline built up for Omega as well. Also, we got to see a different part of Order 66 being played out. So overall, a great premiere. I'm so excited for this series. Alright, so episode 2, cut and run. Alright, so the first point that I want to touch on with episode 2 is right away the Bad Batch lands on a planet named Salukami, and when they land, it was really cool to see Omega. When she got out of the ship, she was so excited. Everything is just brand new to her that she actually picked up dirt and was just so curious about it, and asked everyone like, what is this? And they're all like, oh, it's just dirt. But to her, it's just something brand new. And so we really get to see just how held in she was. She was so sheltered. She's such an innocent character. So we're already getting a lot of character development of Omega just in the first few seconds of this episode, which is really great to see. Alright, so just a few minutes after landing on this planet, we see that the Bad Batch runs into Cut and his family. Alright, so a little bit of backstory on Cut real quick. So he first showed up in the Clone Wars Season 2, and we find out that his ship crashed on this planet, and he found himself a wife and actually started a family with her and has chosen his own life to live. And so that is why the Bad Batch has gone to him, because he's no longer, of an army. He wasn't of the Republic, and now, he's not part of the Empire, so it's someone who they could trust. I was definitely glad to see that, my second theory did pan out and that they were able to see Cut, because he's such an interesting character. The fact that a clone was able to go start a family of his own, it's really cool to see. As they are there with his family, Cut actually mentions that Captain Rex was actually there the day before. He showed up and warned them about what had just happened. Order 66 warned them about the chips, and one that's mentioned, specifically chips, Hunter, and the rest of the Bad Batch except for Tech, didn't realize that chips were making clones turn. And so the fact that that stood out so much to Hunter, you can kind of tell maybe he's already planning to save Crosshair, to get Crosshair and take that chip out to save their brother. So that would be really cool to see in this series as well, kind of a redemption story for Crosshair, since he turned right away in the first episode. I bet you that's where they're going in the future, but we'll definitely just have to wait and see what they do there with that story. Also, going back just a little bit to when Rex was mentioned, that's really cool to see, because this is literally just almost 24 hours, 48 hours after Order 66. Alright, so the last time we saw Rex was Season 7 of the Clone Wars, right when Order 66 was initiated. Ahsoka was actually able to save Rex, and they were able to escape a full ship of clones who was, trying to attack them and kill them. Really emotional. Definitely go back and watch Season 7. Really great Star Wars content, and it gets you a really good story and a really good perspective of Order 66 and the relationship that Rex and Ahsoka now have. And there's no mention of Ahsoka showing up with Rex to Cut and his family, so we can assume Rex and Ahsoka have already split up, because since Ahsoka is considered a Jedi, we know that the Empire is going to be after her, so it's not safe for Rex to be with her. So at this point, we can assume that Rex showed up alone and has now gone into hiding himself as well, because, he is a clone. He's a clone that had his chip taken out, so he's not under the Empire, so he's going to be wanted too if he's found. Also, a great thing that we saw in episode 2 is just how drastically things change with the Empire. So we see the birth of chain codes. Now, this is something we see a lot in different Star Wars content, such as The Mandalorian, with the Empire needing chain codes. This is just their way of keeping track of everyone in the galaxy. Now, this is shown in this episode when Cut and his family wants to get off the planet and go into hiding again. It was required to have chain codes to get on a transport, and so that's what this episode is about, is helping Cut and his family get off the planet, as well as the Bad Batch finding a place to go for their own being as well. Now, since this episode is about Cut and his family leaving, Hunter has this idea that Omega needs to be left with Cut and his family. She needs a family of her own. She needs brothers and sisters, and she needs parental figures in her life. And so Hunter, makes a deal with Cut and his wife that they're going to take Omega so she can live a safe life, because she's not a soldier. She's not like the Bad Batch. She doesn't deserve a life of running. She deserves a life with a family. And that's where we see a little bit of Hunter's father figure coming in. Although, he doesn't want to be the father of her, we can see that he does already truly care about her and wants what's best, which is definitely what a father should want for their child. So when Omega is told that she has to leave the Bad Batch, she's really concerned, really sad. She asks, have I done something wrong? She's very confused, and real quick, Hunter just had to explain that she deserved a better life. She didn't deserve a life of a soldier. She needed a family, and in that moment, they went their separate ways. They said goodbye. It was really sad to see. Cut and his family had to go on this transport, and Hunter had to return with the Bad Batch, who at this time, as we see, is, fighting off some clones, trying to get their ship back in custody so they can get off this planet and go into hiding as well. As they're fighting off the clones, however, they're about to take off, and Omega is there. She's running back to the ship, wants to stay with them. As we see, the Bad Batch, of course, gets away safely, and Omega's on the ship. She's talking with Hunter, and she's honestly, just apologizing. She's like, I'm sorry. I know I have a lot to learn. I probably shouldn't have done that, but, this is where I want to be. And Hunter, instead of fighting it, instead of scolding her, says, if this is where you want to be, then this is where you'll stay. Right here, we see kind of the acceptance of Omega from Hunter. So now we finally got that father figure locked in for Omega. We got that relationship, that character development between the two really just took a boost, and we were able to see that. Quick shout out to the Mandalorian Din and Hunter for already being our favorite dads of the universe. Alright, so for episode 2, obviously it is shorter than the premiere, as well as it's not as fast paced, there's not as much action. So for that, I am giving it a score of 8.5 out of 10, so still super high because we still had great character development. We got to see a familiar face again, we got to see Cut. I mean, of course he's a clone, so we're going to see a lot of his face, but it was nice to see him and his family being a little bit older from when we saw them in season 2 of the Clone Wars. Obviously, I am really excited to see where this series goes. Got a lot of theories in my head, got a lot of questions as well. If you guys have any questions about the Bad Batch, put them down in the comments. We'll see if we can work it out together, maybe come up with some of our own theories. And like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, if you are not already subscribed, subscribe to our channel, as well as give this video a like. Alright, so obviously I've had a blast talking about the Bad Batch. I have a blast watching it as well. It comes out every Friday on Disney+, so make sure you watch it and then come back here so we can go over some reviews and also some new fan theories as much as we can. If you like today's video, we're going to have a lot more in the future, so be sure to hit that subscribe button as well as the like button. Let me know that you like this content. I've had a blast. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll catch you next time.